So, yeah, my presentation is, I called it Don't Blame Me, It Was an Accident, Puzzles about Intentionality and Responsibility. And I will be talking today about, the timing. I will be talking today about this relation, the relation between intentionality and responsibility. But before beginning, I'd like to thank to the organizers for giving us this great opportunity. I would also like to thank you in advance for listening to my presentation. Hopefully, you'll ask me some questions at the end, and I will be able to learn from your feedback. I also hope to be clear, not too technical, and I try to be brief. And most importantly, I hope not to bore you. Okay, so this is the structure I will follow. First, I will establish a difference between actions and happenings. Then I'll establish a difference between acting intentionally versus acting with an intention. After that, I will set two principles of responsibility, and I will address a case of study in order to make clearer all these definitions and principles. And then if we have time enough, I'll go to the questions and answers. So let me establish a first difference between actions and mere happenings. Surely not every movement involving us is a movement we bring about, right? I would even say that in some sense, there are many movements involving us that we suffer from. Philosophers of action generally agree that these sort of movements are not actions. Rather, they are happenings involving our bodies, which take place beyond our control. Think, for instance, about spasms, tics, our screaming when watching a horror movie, our laughing when it's a comedy, the attachments of our retinae, or our stomach cramps when we need to go to the toilet. These events are just happenings that involve us or our bodies. They are not actions. They are not actions ascribable to us. But why are they not? The intuitive, but perhaps not the most accurate answer is the following. They are mere happenings because they are not caused by us. Actions, on the contrary, actions are caused by us. So what is the difference between taking a step, say when going upstairs or whatever, and stumbling on one of the trees? The intuition is that the step was caused to happen, whilst the stumbling was not. Some way or another, the person in question moved her leg and took the step. That is to say, it was not the case that her leg spontaneously moved. In the stumbling case, however, the person did not cause her foot to fall short. Put simply, she did the step but underwent the stumbling. So this is the first distinction to be kept in mind. Actions are directly caused to happen and not underwent. For instance, taking a step. But happenings are not directly caused to happen, and they are underwent. For instance, think about the stumbling on a tree. That is not something you do, that is something that happens to you. For the moment, just keep this in mind. And let me now introduce a second difference between intentionally performing an action and performing an action with certain intention. In general terms, to perform an action intentionally is to be committed to performing it. If you intend to pay attention to what I'm saying right now, if you will, you commit yourself to listening to me carefully, to not getting distracted, and so on and so on. Having that intention somehow makes you control your behavior in order to actually paying attention to me. When you go to the supermarket, right, you may have the intention of buying some food. Um, so in that case, you commit yourself uh, to buy the items in your shopping list. Buying food intentionally means that your buying it is under your direct control. If you buy something unintentionally, it is because you don't directly control that purchase. Just think of cases when you discovered you bought something you didn't intend to buy. Say you realize you bought sparkling water instead of regular water. This happened to me a couple of times. So you wanted to buy the regular water, but you end up buying the sparkling water, and that was something you didn't intend it, right? So, but when you perform an action with certain intention, it is not that you only commit yourself to that action, but you also, and this is an important thing, you also commit yourself to something else that follows from that action. For instance, if you buy some food with the intention of eating it as soon as you get home, you commit yourself to buy it and to eat it. The difference then is that when you merely intend to buy the food, you don't commit yourself to doing anything else. You may happily buy the food and then let it rotten in your fridge. Don't do that. But when you buy it with the intention of eating it, you commit yourself to eat it. You control your behavior so as to finally eat the food. If you don't eat it, in this case, you may feel that you failed, just like when you study with the intention of passing the exam, but you don't eventually pass it. You feel that you failed. Thus, a key feature of intentionality seems to be this sort of direct control over one's behavior. That is why accidents are not intentional. Accidents are not intentional because they are events that are somewhat against our direct control. So when you have an intention, right, you commit yourself to perform an action. If you buy intentionally, you commit yourself to buy. And if you intend yourself to buy regular water, you commit yourself to buy regular water and not to buy any other kind of water, like sparkling water. And when you act with an intention, when you have an intention with which philosophers speak like that, you commit yourself to perform an action and to something that follows from that action because you acted with that intention. So in this case, say you commit yourself to buying and you buy with the intention of eating what you bought. So in that case, you commit yourself both to the buying and to the eating. So now that we have all these definitions at hand, I want to state the following two principles. Um, the first principle states that one is not responsible for the happenings involving oneself, except in certain special cases. We will see later on. We will see this later on. And the second principle states that one is more responsible for the side effects of one's actions when bringing these about was the intention with which one acted. So the first principle states that we are not responsible for the happenings that involve us, except in certain special cases. This is because responsibility only applies to people in virtue of their power of bringing about events, as opposed to undergoing such events. So we cannot be blamed for the things we haven't done. For these are events we just underwent. Neither are we responsible for our bodily reactions, like when we suffer a jump scare, nor are we blamable for the things others do to us, for the things we undergo. And the second principle states that we are more responsible for the side effects of our actions when we perform these with the intention of causing those. For example, let's say that a side effect of your buying food is the perpetuation of a contaminant production system. To some extent, I believe you are responsible of that contamination. However, you will be more responsible if you bought the food just with the intention of contaminating. If you just bought the food with intention of eating it, you are not as responsible of the contamination as you could be. But, but the point is that you are. You are responsible even though the contamination itself is not something you directly cause to happen. This is one of the special cases I was talking about in the first principle. So, for instance, I say you are not responsible of your jump scare when watching a horror movie or whatever, for you didn't directly cause it to happen. You don't directly cause to happen the jump scare when watching this. None here. And the second principle, I say you are responsible of the factory's contamination, but much more you would be if you bought food with the intention of contaminating. In that case, you would be committed to the buying and you would be committed to the contamination, which is a side effect of your buying, even though you don't directly cause the contamination, you don't directly cause the side effects. That is why it is called side effect. So let's now apply these definitions and principles to a daily case. So I remember this big fight with my older brother when we were kids. It was Christmas and my older brother was having some hot chocolate. I was jumping on the sofa just beside him. I don't know why, but I used to play like that when I was a kid. I like to run and jump. So the thing is that I suddenly fell. I hit the mug, and so all the burning chocolate spilled over my brother's pajamas. So he punched me and I cried. But the question is, did I deserve that punch? Well, let's put the punching aside and ask more generally. Was I blamable for the spilling? What do you think? You tell me later on. If you asked me 15 years ago, I would have said that I wasn't blamable. But now I believe that I was responsible of the spilling. 15 years ago, I would have said something to the effect that it was my arm who dropped the chocolate, so to speak, and not me. I would have said that I didn't cause my body to fall, nor my arm to hit the mug, let alone did I cause the chocolate to spill. Neither the falling, nor the hitting, nor the spilling were actions of mine, and they happen against my direct control. I would have said that it was an accident. They were accidents in which I was involved. I would have insisted then that I didn't intend it. I didn't intend it. That is why I kept crying to my brother, "Don't blame me, it was an accident. Don't blame me, it was an accident." Now, something must be noted in this respect, something that I now noticed, and namely that I did both directly cause and I did also intend the jumping on the sofa. The jumping on the sofa was an action of mine and it was under my direct control. And you would ask, were not the falling, the hitting, and the spilling side effects of my jumping? Well, now I believe that they are. And so I do now believe that I was actually blamable to some extent for the spilling. However, I still believe that I didn't deserve the punching. That's it. Thank you.